So to get things started, we're going to lay the first 3 stones in the pathway. I make a 90-degree mark, as this first piece is going to be sitting in the inside corner. It's going to need a little notch cut out of it. I'm using my small grinder with a diamond bit to cut this little notch out. There are no strict formulas in crazy paving.
You come and go like a monsoon rain. You hide and show like a lightning bolt. You have it all.
Now that the concrete foundation is all set and ready, we're going to start laying our sandstone. We're going to be laying stone for the staircase and the pathway back and forth. This way we can let elements dry before we have to add on to them. So to get things started, we're going to lay the first 3 stones in the pathway, because these step stones have to lay on the top of them. It also allows us to get the side started. So it's a bit of a Lego puzzle. I'm going to get started with these first 3 here. I'm setting myself up with some pallets to help manage the stone for this pathway. I'm laying these pallets close to the path so they'll be really handy for stone selection. And of course little Gus is here to help me. Our supply of stone was delivered on a pallet. Unfortunately, it was positioned quite a distance from where we're building this pathway. So I'm using my trailer to transport all the stone close to where we're going to be working with it. As I lay out the stone pieces on these pallets, I'm starting to organise the stone into some different categories. I'm sorting them by the rough or smooth texture they have, and also by the size. I've set up some additional planks over here to put the small pieces on. I've also got to set up my wet saw, because this is what we're going to be cutting all our stone with. I'm positioning it in a comfortable distance away from our work area. After unfolding the legs and locking them into position, I need to get it level. This is part of the safety and practical aspect of operating this tool. I'm filling the wet saw with water. This is how this machine keeps its blade cool and also stops the dust getting into the air. There was a few irregularities created when we poured our concrete. I'm setting up my grinder with a diamond cutting bit to smooth out the concrete steps so they're perfectly flat for our stone to stick to them at the right height.
I remember hearing songs, decades old, but it doesn't matter. Stumble across some memories, try to recall before they all shattered. She kept dreaming of a world big enough for everyone. She knew it must rain before it was. She kept dreaming of a day butterflies survived the will, even though she could knock down and never showed.
I'm giving all the concrete a thorough wash down. This is critical for the tile cement to be able to stick properly and for our stone to stay in place. We're going to start laying our sandstone. So to get things started, we're going to lay the first 3 stones in the pathway, because then I can get these stones on the staircase laid. To get us started, I'm selecting a nice flat medium-sized stone and setting it up on my wet saw. Using my large set square, I make a 90-degree mark, as this first piece is going to be sitting in the inside corner. I make the cut slowly and carefully. I always wear eye and ear protection when I'm operating my wet saw. This first corner piece is going to need a little notch cut out of it to make room for the edge of the planking we installed on the side of the house. By laying this piece out parallel to the wall, I can mark out the notch with my small set square. I'm using my small grinder with a diamond bit to cut this little notch out, because it's easier and more effective than using the wet saw for such a small cut. After chipping off this corner notch, I return it to the pathway so we can figure out how the next piece of stone is going to fit into this puzzle. There are no strict formulas in crazy paving, but I do have a couple of strategies I'm trying to stick with. By having 3 pieces of stone to cover the 1200mm path, we're setting up a formula that our staircase will be able to follow. I've selected a stone that's already naturally the right shape to fit the space we're trying to fill. It's just going to need a little bit of a trim so it can fit tightly into the first stone we've laid. I'm using my spirit level on the pencil to mark where we want to make the cut. After moving the stone to a more practical area for doing our cut, I transpose the pencil mark onto the back of the stone. The idea is to not cut all the way through, to only cut halfway through. That way when we crack the stone, we end up with a much more natural looking cut on the top. I use pliers to break off any overhanging pieces to straighten out the edge. Here you can see how the stone looks natural where we've made our cut. I return this piece to its original position to scribe the next mark for the second cut we'll make to fit this stone. Like before, I select a piece that naturally covers the space we're trying to fill. This way I don't waste too much material when we trim the stone. Here you can see how I'm transposing the pencil mark onto the back of our piece to make the cut. I'll be using this process for all the pieces I have to fit into the pathway. Return this piece to its final position and then trim the edges on the second piece of stone we put in place. This is to prepare for the future stones we'll be joining on later. I'm lucky enough to have a lot of space on this job site, so I'm going to mix the tile cement quite a distance away from my stone. This will help avoid getting any spills or splatters on our stone as I'm mixing the product. After mixing the ceramicrete to a plaster consistency, I rinse off my tool with a bucket of water I have close by. I mix the tile cement in small batches through this process as it can go off quite quickly, and I need the mortar to remain soft as part of the process of squeezing the stone down properly onto the concrete. I'm tracing out our stones with my pencil so I know where to put the tile cement without creating too much of a mess. I apply a really generous amount of the product directly onto the concrete. Then I clean it up with my tile rake so we have the appropriate thickness to make a good contact with the stone. I'm using packers to set the height of these stones. By using these packers, I can control the slope of the stones, so this way our pathway will have a very gradual slope away from the house for rain drainage. The back of the stone also gets buttered with the tile adhesive. This sandstone has little grooves in the back of it, which is specifically designed for you to push the tile cement in to get a really good bond between the stone and the concrete you're sticking it to. Hitting the stone gently with my rubber hammer helps settle it on top of the packers so it ends up at the right height and the material's squeezed all the way through. By checking it with the small and large level, I'm confident that it's on the right angle to achieve the rain runoff we want. I move on to the next piece of stone, repeating the same process.
She kept dreaming of a world big enough for everyone. She knew it must rain before it rose. She kept dreaming of the day butterflies survive the wheel, even though she could knock down and never show. Dear Lily, where'd you go? Where's your heart at? Why'd you fall back? Lately your afterglow is shining brighter, waking up an easy head.
I still have a lot of tile cement left over, and it's still soft enough to be quite usable, so I'm going to stick one more stone in to help use up the material. Because this is the high side of the slope we're trying to create for the rain runoff, this stone needs 5mm packers under it to get it to the right height. This smaller stone will match the height of the first stone we put in the corner. After checking with the level that it's all lined up correctly, I clean up the edges with my small trowel and sponge it off. With these stones in place, I now have the foundation to start the cladding on the staircase. So the plan today is to get these bricks all started along this wall. We've got to work in courses just like laying normal bricks, because the tiles we stick on here or the stone we stick on here has to set up before we get the next piece on top. These are now stuck down solid enough that we can work on top of them. Using my set square and level, I'm double checking the height of our steps. The finished height is supposed to be 160 mil. The concrete foundation of the step is measuring at 135 mil. That's going to allow me 25 mil for our stone and tile cement to end up at the finished height of 160 mil. So everything's on target. This means the stones we're going to be using in our brick pattern that lay on the front of the steps need to be cut 135 mil wide. Here I've found a stone that's very close to that measurement. It's slightly wider than we need, so I'll trim it on the wet saw, and it should be a good start to all the bricks we're going to be cutting for this staircase. The stone for the staircase is going to be laid out differently from the crazy paving pathway. It's going to be laid in a brick or a tile pattern, so we need to turn this sandstone into little bricklets or tiles. I start this process by creating a straight edge on one side of the stone by doing a rip with my wet saw all the way down one side. Using my saw clamp, I set it up so it's 135 mil from the blade by measuring it with a little set square. Once I have this saw clamp locked in at the right width, all the bricks I need to cut for the first course will come out at the same thickness. Once I've made all the necessary adjustments and double checked one last time with my set square, I cut the stone. I'll be using this as a test piece to see if it fits properly. I return the stone to the position it's going to be laid in and double check the heights come out. I want this to be exact. We're going to be creating a formula here, and all the bricks for the entire first course of the stairway that wrap around the whole thing, I want them all to be the same height. I'm satisfied 135 mil is the right height to cut all these bricklets at. Now I need to work out the width of the bricks on the front of this first step, so they line up neatly with the first 3 stones we put on the pathway. I take some measurements and start checking our supply of stone to find one that's going to be wide enough.
People knew her by her will to make it whatever she put her mind to. Late night hours up the hill, serving coffee, strangers talking about revenue. She kept dreaming of a world big enough for everyone, but she knew it must rain before it grows. She kept dreaming of the day butterflies survived the wheel, even though she got knocked down and never showed.
This pencil mark will act as a guide for when I'm cutting it on the wet saw. I return it to its position to make sure that our cut has come out accurately. I'm double checking with my small level. It's really important that all our steps come out exactly at the same height. That's why I'm spending so much time to get this exact. With the centerpiece complete, I'm now going to cut 2 more to fit either side of it.
I remember her in songs, decades old, but it doesn't matter. Stumble across some memories, try to recall before they all shatter. She kept dreaming of a world big enough for everyone, but she knew it must rain before it grows. She kept dreaming of the day butterflies survived the wheel, even though she got knocked down and never showed.
for the first course. Join me in the next episode as we cement them in place. Thanks for joining me this week in my YouTube channel. Check the link below, and while you're at it, hit the subscribe button or make a comment so I can help you with your future construction solutions. And don't forget to follow our channel for more ideas and how-to tips for home and garden projects.